Hey YouTube friends, this is the Pumpkin Patch Gardener, and boy are we gonna get into the seeds today. So I've got, I would say, a decent collection of seeds. I try not to make it too extensive because I don't want the seeds to be sitting in here for 10 years before I actually try all the varieties. So what I normally do is I'll add one or two varieties of different things that I'm interested in growing better each year. Tomatoes, for example. Now, this year I went all out on the tomatoes. I got, I think, 5 new varieties of tomatoes, but I intend to grow them all this coming year. And what I'll do is I'll take a look at my tomatoes that I grew last year and go, okay, these ones weren't worth growing. These ones I'll do again. And so I sort of swap in the varieties that I am trying new for ones that in the past have disappointed or haven't lived up to their purpose. So these are my seeds. It's pretty fun. I'm going to start with the pumpkin patch seeds actually because I always keep them separate. Alright, so we're going to get into the pumpkin patch. We're going to start with what I've been growing in the past and old favorites, and then we'll get into some new additions for this year. So, okay, I haven't actually ever successfully grown that one, so I'm gonna not put that one on the list. I grew this one last year. I actually don't think I got any fruit from it. We had some issues with high humidity causing pollination problems, so some of them just didn't go. Yeah, so anyways, Blanco is one that I've grown before. This is the, I gotta try to remember. Yeah, no, Blanco is really good. Blanco was a bush type, or for the most part, so it doesn't take up a huge amount of space. They put on a fair few pumpkins. Because they're bush type, all the pumpkins are set on the main stem, kind of like a zucchini. And sometimes that can be a problem for some pumpkins, so it's a give and take whether or not that's good. But on the Blanco specifically, they've got a really long stem on them, and that really helps the fruit not to be set too close to the base, and so it doesn't get real gnarly with the branches and the stems and stuff. Because I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, moonshine. I have grown moonshine pumpkins in the past. They're alright, they're good. I found the Blanco was a little bit more productive in a smaller space, so there's a bit of a trade-off there. Over a longer season, I think moonshine might be more productive, but we don't have a longer season, so that's what we got. I love these. Weren't super productive. They definitely need a longer year than they got this year, and I direct seeded these. And so next year I'm going to try starting these inside, moving them out under a cover. And also this coming year, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go ahead and purchase a couple of 50-foot row covers, and I'm just going to cover the whole pumpkin patch because from direct seed they do so much better without the transplant shock. But also my experiments with starting inside and moving out, putting them out after the same amount of hardening, but one row was undercover, one row wasn't undercover. That one row undercover took off and was super productive. The other row that didn't get covered didn't produce a single viable fruit in the whole year. So it just makes a big difference. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to start these ones inside to give them a head start, and then put them out under the cover to help them survive that transplant shock. We grew these flat whites last year as well. Very, very productive, very happy with them. Very heavy vining, like they're gonna go a long ways, as well as these, and I'm not gonna try to pronounce that name because not French. I can't do French. Anyways, those are also really good. Blaze. These are another bush type pumpkin, pretty steady. I've got actually a couple of blazes from not this past season, but the season before. I'll show you those. So these are actually from 2019's crop, and they are still holding up really well. Of course, I should probably be eating them soon, but I just always like to experiment a little bit to see what things last a really long time, and just to show that it can be done. I think pumpkins are a completely overlooked source of food storage for long-term food storage, because they don't need canning. It doesn't need to be frozen. It doesn't have to be processed. If it's the right kind of pumpkin and it's in the right kind of environment, it can last a really long time. And what I do is I just leave all my pumpkins out where I can see them regularly, and I'll just go, okay, that one's getting a little bit wrinkly and a little bit soft. I should cook that one now. The ones that are still hard, I'll leave for later. And so I think pumpkins are underused as a food storage option. I just gotta catch my breath because I'm so excited about seeds that I'm talking too fast. Give me a minute. All right. Neon pumpkins. These are a go-to, a must-have. I grow these every year. They're not my favorite pumpkin. They're not my favorite for flavor, they're not my favorite for growth habit, but they are consistent, they are early, and they are orange on the vine. So as a baby fruit, where most pumpkins are green as a baby fruit, neons are orange, and they just turn a darker orange as they mature. They usually have a bit of a green star up on the top right around the stem. And as that fades into full orange and the stem itself hardens off, that's how you know they're fully ripened. But they're really great, really consistent, really productive. They don't tend to take up too much space. I'd say you probably want at least 4 foot by 4 foot square for a plant all by itself in a garden, like in a small garden where you're not growing rows and rows and rows. But I usually space these about 3 feet apart, but then I give lots of room in the aisles for to get around them and stuff. Yeah, definite winners. And also you can take small pumpkins, especially the ones of the more jack-o'-lantern types. They're not necessarily grown for eating. They can all be eaten, but the ones that are less desirable for eating because they're not as flavorful, those you can pick them immature and you can treat them the same way you would a zucchini. I mean, you can do that with any of them, but obviously the ones that are going to mature into your sugar pie pumpkins, you're going to want those at their best, at their sweetest, because of what you're using them for. Something like this, you can take it immature, you can saute that, you can barbecue it, you can grill it, roast it, whatever. Treat it the same way you would zucchini. You could shred it and put it in a cake. Absolutely versatile that way. Another great pumpkin is a new rocket. They have been very consistent for being sort of my middle to larger size pumpkins that I sell on the stand. They're definitely a jack-o'-lantern style, so they're not as sweet or flavorful. They're a little bit stringier, a little bit more watery, but a great basic larger pumpkin. Supposed to average between 14 and 22 pounds. I think that's all right, but I definitely have had some on the high end of that 22. Another one I really enjoy, it's called Porcelain Doll, and these are so beautiful and pink. I don't think I have any left. I think I sold them all. Porcelain Doll, if you can get it to start fruiting, it is so quick to mature its fruit. It's beautiful. They're really beautiful. They start out sort of a salmony color, and then as they harden off and the more sunshine they get, the more of a sort of dusty pastel-y pink comes through, and they're just really beautiful. Great eating pumpkins, awesome all around. They do take a little bit longer to get to the fruiting stage, but if you can nurture it along to that point, this is an absolute winner. I would grow this every year. For a short season pumpkin patch, Baby Pam is your pie pumpkin. I've seen and tried sugar babies. I'm not sure if I've tried another one, but I can't remember. Anyways, this is the shortest season pie pumpkin that I found, and it is pretty generally productive. It's not super, like I think in a longer season or in an area with a lot more water than we generally have, they would do better. But I think with the row covers to speed up the beginning of the year, I think they're really going to take off next year. And they've been really consistent for me in the past. Excellent pumpkins, great size, really nice and hard. They harden off really well. They store really well. Just all around excellent pumpkins. The Atlantic Giant. Now we grow this one pretty much purely as a novelty. We've never put a lot of effort into getting a giant pumpkin, but it's fun to watch them grow. These start off sort of a yellow color with a really, really thick stem. Like I'll say the stem is probably a good 2.5 inches diameter as it's putting on fruit. It's really interesting to watch. It's a lot of fun for kids. It's a great one if you want to take some of, so with giant pumpkins what you often do is you'll prune off the smaller ones to let a bigger one grow all by itself. These ones, the small immature fruits, are perfect for treating like zucchini. They're very similar in texture, they're slightly different in flavor, they're a little bit more pumpkin-y but not very much, so it's an excellent sort of zucchini alternative, and it's a way that you don't have to throw away the trimmings, which is nice. I like that. Those need space also. Those definitely need space. Okay. This is summer squash. It's zucchini. Noche variety. These are very productive. I've been satisfied with them. Bush type, as I think most zucchini are. And I've got one seed left. So I guess we're gonna grow one zucchini squash like this. Oh, another one I'd forgotten here was summer squash, which is, this is a spaghetti squash called Pinnacle. Now this one promises an average of 3 pounds for fruit size. Never trust spaghetti squash. A 3-pound spaghetti squash might be about that size, and that would be perfect. So I'm looking at maybe 6 to 8 inches long, 4 to 5 inches round diameter. That would be perfect for a family like us where it's just the two of us. You know, we'd eat half of the spaghetti squash on one meal and then put the other half in the fridge for another meal. This one, however, has produced some pretty massive, I think I cooked that one already. But yeah, when it says an average of 3 pounds, that's not a promise or a guarantee. That's just a possible. This is a semi-bush type, which is great. It doesn't take up too much space. It does ramble a little bit, but not nearly as much as some of the other varieties I've had in the past. Good flavor, good quality. I've had some of these last, actually still have one in the basement, from not last year, but the year before. So I've eaten a 2-year-old spaghetti squash, and it was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't moldy. You know, you don't want to eat something that's moldy, obviously. But if it's fine and it's firm and it looks like and smells like spaghetti squash, it's fine. What I found was it wasn't as moist, because usually a fresh spaghetti squash has so much water in it that you have to drain it out. That one I actually added a little bit of extra sauce because the spaghetti squash itself was actually fairly dry. That's not always going to be the case. They're not always going to keep for 2 years, but they can keep for a lot longer than you'd think. So again, an excellent source of food storage if you like spaghetti squash. We're not big spaghetti squash people, so it kind of is like a 1 or 2 a year kind of thing for us. And they can occasionally be, you know, 10 pounds or more, so watch out for that. All right, so I've talked about this one in the past. Vessie's Baby Jack Mix. This is a lovely blend of little miniature pumpkins that are either white or orange, or white and orange speckles. Like a stripe in the, what's the word? Can't find the word. Anyways, they've got stripes and then they speckles on the outer sections of the, whatever, the things. Stripes and speckles, that's what it is. Great mix, except that I have very often grown, have had pumpkin patches in the past where I've grown 6 or 7 plants and ended up with 1 orange one and 5 white ones, or all striped and speckled ones and none of the other kinds. So it's just, I really love those varieties. I just wish I could get them in individual packets so that I could specifically seed each kind in the quantity that I want, so that I get a nice mix instead of accidentally ending up with whatever happens. Especially as those are for sale, people would like a greater variety in mini pumpkins to sell. If they're all the same color, they might pick 1 or 2. If there's different colors, well, they gotta get all the colors, right? So just something to consider when you're buying mixed packages. If that's all you can get to get the varieties you want, then go for it. Give it a try. Give it a whirl. It's worth it. But if you're really, if you feel really strongly about getting a multiple different varieties, you might just want to keep looking for another seed supplier that'll sell them to you in a separate package. Or, and this is what I'm going to do, I think, next year, is I'm going to contact Bessie's and I'm going to ask if it's possible to get a package of them, but separated into their types. We'll see if that works. If so, I'll let you know. This is my package from last year. So I had refilled that one. These ones I grew for the first time, as seen on Roots and Refuge, and where else did I see this? Gardener's World. I enjoy Gardener's World. I watch it in the winter when I can't garden, so that I get excited and inspiration for the next year, but I don't watch it in the summer because I'm too busy. Anyways, these were really good. They were very productive. They do sprawl a little bit, but totally worth it. The size of these would be excellent for planting on a trellis or something like that, where, you know, if you don't have a lot of space, grow them up. I think they would do great for that because they're really, really nice vining plants. You might want to tie them up, but otherwise it should be all right. All right, and again, we have the mixed package gourds. Gourds very often come in a mixed package. So this is just a small gourds mix. And last year we got really lucky. We had 4 types and they were all different, which was great. But in the past I have had years where, like, we had 2 really productive gourds and they were both exactly the same. That was a bit disappointing. Jill B. Little. Now this is, it's basically a mini, but it's a little bit bigger than the Baby Jacks. And it's a uniform dark orange skin mini pumpkin. Big yielding, uniform, beautiful, really, really deeply, I'm trying to find that word again with the pumpkins. Does it say? No, it doesn't say. Let me see. Yeah. I'll find the word eventually. Anyways, another one that we grew this year, pepitas. These we started inside because the naked seeded pumpkins tend to have a little bit of a harder time germinating under the wrong conditions. They rot really easily because they don't have that husk. So I started these inside, put them out under a row cover. They were the first thing to fruit, and they, like, we had 3 plants, and I think we got a dozen generous sized pumpkins. Now they don't have tons of seed in each, so you want to keep that in mind. You might get, for a 6-pound pumpkin, you might get maybe a cup of seeds. So the seed ratio is a lot lower than it is in some other varieties, but the flavor and quality of these seeds is so worth growing. They're so vigorous. They're such excellent producers. Definitely going to be growing this again, but again, I'm going to start them inside to help get a really solid germination. And I'm going to put them out under row cover to get them past that transplant shock that can put plants back so hard. And then birdhouse gourds. Now this one I haven't actually grown enough to sell, although we had quite a few small ones this year. That's a very, very long season plant, and I'm gonna have to start that a little bit earlier. And I'm gonna maybe leave that under cover until it starts blooming in the middle of summer, because it's really needs a long time. But I can show you one of them, which isn't that great. So we got 2 big birdhouse gourds this year. We also got this one. I love how they're not the same. But anyways, I'm gonna tie a string around that, drill a hole in there, and I'll either fill it with birdseed or let the birds make a nest in it. Once they're dry, of course. Right now they're still wet. You want to wait until gourds are totally dried out, hollow. You can hear the seeds shaking, and they've lost all of their water before you drill into them. Because if you puncture the skin before they get to that point, the mold situation, you can't keep it under control and they will rot. A few more. Now I have attempted to grow this. Last year it did not take, it just didn't get out fast enough. It was, we transplanted these and they didn't get put under a row cover right away, and the transplant shock just kept them small for the whole season. Everything else around them was growing really well, but these ones didn't get covered quickly enough or sufficiently, and they just never caught up. But I am very excited to grow these Taikang cob. They just look really cool. Also, supposed to be edible, so like good eating. Ribbed, that's the word. Deeply ribbed. That's the word I was looking for. Jeepers. Simple enough. All right. And then last but definitely not least is the Jarrahdale blue. Well, it's sort of blue. They're sort of a steely gray, blue-green color. They are popular in Australia. I'm not sure if they come from Australia or were bred in Australia, but anyways, beautiful. We grew some this year. They were great. They were really beautiful. Unfortunately, they all sold, so I didn't get to eat any. Next time I'm going to hold one back for myself. All right, so that is the pumpkin patch. I should say that is what I've grown in the pumpkin patch in the past. I do have 2 new ones for the pumpkin patch this year, and also for personal use. So these ones, actually these are going to be personal use. I'm going to grow them in the same area of the pumpkin patch because that's where I got more space for them to sprawl. So that's just a yellow scallop squash. I want to grow these for stuffing. And then these are going to be pumpkin patch, as well as possibly a little bit of personal use. These are also a patty pan squash, or a French scallop squash. What's really cool about these is you can pick them young, like these, and eat them, or you can let them mature and get older, and they get all these beautiful wrinkles and warts and things on them, and they're really cool as decorations later on. So I'm excited to try those as well. Those are new for pumpkin patch and for squash this year. All right. Oh, this feels like a long video already, and I haven't even gotten to my main garden. All right. Where do I begin? I'm going to begin with some garden basics. So tomatoes. Tomatoes are important to me. Love tomatoes. I have some seed packages that I've saved. And now most of these were not isolated seed. I didn't isolate the flower heads before I collected the seed, so I'm uncertain about the absolute purity of these, which is why I've labeled them that way. The one that I did isolate, I'm happy about that. But I figured it was worth saving the seeds, isolated or not, just in case I couldn't get more seeds later in the year. And I wanted to make an effort to begin saving a lot more seeds, and I realized the majority of my tomatoes were not heirlooms. They were hybrids, and so you can't get true to parent seed from them. And so one of the things I wanted to do this year was introduce a lot more heirlooms that I can save seed from, so that I'm not needing to buy tomato seed every year. And also, the heirloom tomatoes are cool. They have the best flavors usually, and they just have really unique stories, unique flavors, unique qualities. They've been really carefully bred by tomato growers, and that is of value to me. I'd also like to be able to start a seed swap in my local area eventually, and so I want to be able to save seed and be able to give it away to people and say, this is like a 99% chance that it's true to what the parent was, so that they're not disappointed, and also so that I can sort of feel like, yeah, I did that right for them. I've got a couple packages of seed actually from my sister-in-law, because I'll often start her tomatoes and peppers for her. I'm not going to go through those varieties. I do often throw in some of my own varieties for her as well. And so let's get into the tomatoes. Last year, I grew these for the first time, and I think I started them in January. I'm actually planning to start these and some lettuce seeds fairly soon here, because it's going to take a couple months for them to grow big enough to start fruiting or to start harvesting from. But these did fruit and ripen inside. They were a lovely little reminder that spring is coming, that summer is coming, and I didn't have to wait until September to get my first tomato. And then what ended up happening is they did so well in their tiny little pots, and they were such small little plants that when spring came, the ground thawed. I just didn't have the heart to throw them away. So they stayed fairly small in their little pots. I had them in little, like maybe 3 or 4 inch ceramic terracotta pots, and they stayed under a foot tall, maybe 5-6 inches wide plants. Not too dense. They're not quite as dense as they showed in this picture. I think this has probably grown with some pretty heavy grow lights and pruning involved, possibly. Anyways, mine were a little bit more sparse than that, and so at the end of the spring, when I finally got to plant stuff outside, instead of chucking them in the compost, I actually just planted them in some pots next to my sweet potatoes, because my sweet potatoes are in these really huge pots. And I expected these not to get very much bigger, but boy, was I wrong. If you give them enough space and plenty of nutrients and plenty of water, they will get a lot bigger. So, and of course, a lot of light. So outside, they will have gotten a lot more light. And they handled it really well. They ended up being 2 feet wide, hanging over the sides of my pot, and covered in tomatoes. Not only that, but these were, they're really small. They're really small tomatoes, but they have all the flavor of a very large tomato in them. They're so intense. They're a lovely little pop to add into a salad. You don't need a lot of them. If you only have a few, if you've only got one plant and you only eat 1 tomato off of that, that will hit you in the face with tomato flavor. So that was an absolute winter winner for me, and how it summered over and continued to produce was awesome. Love it. Definitely going to be growing that again, hopefully this coming week. All right, so I got Costoluto Fiorentino I've also seen one called Florentino, and I'm not sure if they're the same one and there's a typo somewhere, or if they're actually a variety, sort of siblings. These were my winners this year for tomatoes. I had the 2 plants. Off the 2 plants, I got, was it 60 pounds? No, it was 60 pounds of fruit at the end of the year. When a lot of my tomatoes were struggling, these ones did not. When a lot of my tomatoes were splitting like crazy, because we've never had that much rain before, these guys stayed solid, were awesome. The flavor was a little bit bland, I'll be honest. I think these are an amazing tomato for saucing. I didn't so much enjoy them for canning as diced or whole, because the skin is a little bit difficult to remove. Again, they have fairly deep ribs in them, and that makes it a little bit difficult when you blanch the skin in the ribs that's sort of folded together. That didn't get blanched properly, so it can be hard to peel them. But if you want to put that through a tomato mill, if you want to cook that into a sauce and then sieve out the seeds and skin later, that is a perfect tomato for it. They're not too watery and so productive. That's definitely going to be on the list. I have grown these before. This is a tomato called Ildi. This is a cherry tomato, grape tomato, sorry. Grape tomato, it's a small yellow tomato. It's got sort of that Roma shape with the pointed end. But I've never been very satisfied with how these grow here. They just don't have the vigor, and I end up getting the tomatoes ripening at the same time on my cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes as my other tomato plants. And flavor-wise, they're just not all that exciting. And so I'm looking for a new grape tomato. If you have a favorite, post it in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you're growing. Another hybrid, Summer Pink. Now, these are from Stokes. These have been good. Some years they'll do really great. Some years they're a little bit less impressive. They say a beautiful pastel pink in color. I find they end up looking basically like a really strong pinky red. So they're sort of like redder than a regular tomato. They're good for canning. They're all right taste-wise. They're not terribly exciting like most hybrids. They're sort of prone for production. I haven't had a huge amount of success off of those either, though. Like, they're all right, but I'm probably not going to waste time on them when I can get something that's a little more exciting. All right, speed round because my camera battery is dying and I need to go charge it. Cherokee Purple. Cherokee Purple is a great tomato for flavor. Moderately productive. We had a lot of rain last year and they all split. Now, we usually don't get a lot of rain. So in all the years that I've grown them in the past, that was never an issue. Occasionally blossom end rot will be an issue, but that'll be an issue over most of my plants. So I'm definitely going to grow these again. The flavor is just worth it. It's always been worth it. Every time I go, oh, that's not very productive, I'm a little disappointed, and then I eat the first one and I'm like, nope, that's back on the list. It's maybe not my priority tomato, but it's on the list. All right, we got Scotia. This is a very short season tomato, very productive, a little bit bland, but a good sort of basic tomato. It's sort of a plum size. It's not a plum tomato, but it's sort of a, I don't know, 3-inch max. Generally, it's all right. I got these as a free seed packet from Baker Creek. They've been very productive, super productive. Kind of go wild, take up a lot of space, and put on a lot of fruit, but I'm not super impressed with the flavor, and the skins are really, really thick, and they get really, really soft very quickly, so I might put that on in one spot just to have a quick tomato, because they seem to be fairly quick in our environment. Pineapple is an absolute love of mine. Again, productivity is so much dependent on heat and water and stuff, but the flavor is absolutely worth it every time. So good, so good. All right, I gotta go change my battery now. As far as peppers go, I am growing Carmen, and New Ace are probably my favorite sort of sweet peppers. Carmen is a little bit more of an oblong, and the New Ace is more of a typical green pepper, bell pepper shape. I do have a lot of other pepper seeds in here, the majority of which I don't grow anymore because they're just not my favorite flavor-wise, and they don't store as well. And then there's this one, which is helpful. This is just a jalapeno. Jalapenos grow really well in our environment. They really like the long, sunny days. And then, yeah, so most of these I don't grow every year. I do like the Cheyenne. It's a cayenne type, but they're very hot and they're very prolific, so I tend to grow one of them every couple of years and then just dry all of them, and that holds me over for a while. This year, in the new stuff, we will have also these ones, which are supposed to be pretty chunky boys. Some big peppers. They're also called Spanish Mammoth. So I'm looking forward to those. Hopefully they're as productive as they promise to be. You know what? I'm not sure I got everything. Oh. Okay, I forgot the tomatoes. So I have some new tomato varieties this year, one of which is Brandywine, a classic traditional heirloom. And then I decided to get the Costoluto Florentino to see if it's different or the same or whatever. And then Dr. Witchy's. I know that's not how it's supposed to be pronounced, but I blame Jess from Moods of Refuge. So Dr. Witchy's yellow, Thorburns terracotta, that looks awesome, and then Amish paste for another great canning heirloom. Oh, I think there's another one somewhere. I just have misplaced the seed packet, I think, which is called Pruden Purple. Let me just check. Where did it go? I do not know where that packet of seed went, but it'll be in here somewhere. I saw it just a bit ago. Oh well, we'll just keep going. There it is. I knew I saw it somewhere. So Pruden Purple, it's another heirloom that I have not grown before that I'm looking forward to. It's only a 70 day. That should be good. All right. Cayenne blonde over here. That's where it got lost. Basic stuff. I've got peas, and last year I grew 2 varieties, and I'm going to do it again this year. I have Green Arrow and Dalve. They both are very tasty peas. Dalve I like. It's a little bit of a shorter variety, but it's got a really strong tendril. Like, it's got a lot of tendrils, so it climbs the fence really well. And then the Green Arrow. Oh, the Dalve. They climb fences really well. They hold themselves upright. That's awesome. They'll actually hold themselves upright to a degree without a fence, but at a certain height they will start flopping over. But if you pick them thoroughly, then they'll usually start a second wave of blooms about 2 weeks after your last picking. And then you get a second crop off of them in a good year, so that's awesome. Now that's a dry year, because in very wet years you might have mildew issues or other issues. So, and then the green arrow, I got as a really good, reliable later season pea. So the Dalve are a mid-season, and I'd eventually like to add to that an early season pea so that I have a wide variety of harvest dates. And that just means that if I go for a vacation 1 week in the middle of summer, and it happens to be the week that the peas are blooming, you know, if you only have one timing of peas and one sowing of peas, which is normal in our short climate, you don't do multiple sowings because they often don't come up, then you don't miss your whole harvest, because there's sort of a staggered harvest in the varieties. And it also means that if the conditions are bad for one of them, say the Dalve doesn't like too much moisture, it is more prone to mildew maybe. Maybe the green arrow is less. So your eggs aren't all in one basket in that sense. And this year, this is new for me this year, I'm looking forward to it. It's called Golden Sweet, and it is a snow pea. So I'm looking forward to those. I really like snow peas and snap peas and stuff like that. Corn, my go-to sweet corn is espresso. I have just found it to have unparalleled cold soil vigor. I have seeded this some years with the whole rest of my garden, seeded everything at the same time. And my corn came up before the peas came up, before anything else came up, which that's pretty amazing in a cooler spring environment. So espresso is my go-to sweet corn. And it'll often produce, in a long year, it'll produce 2 heads per stalk. In a short year, you might only get 1, but at least you have something. In a very cold year, you might not get anything regardless of the type, but I think espresso is supposed to be, what does it say on the package, but I think it's like a 68-day to maturity, which is, as far as corn goes, it's a fairly short one, but that cold season vigor makes all the difference, because you can get a shorter season one, but if it doesn't have that cold soil vigor, it's not going to start as soon, and so the day length, or the days to maturity, is less relevant. I have also grown popcorn. I've had luck before with strawberry popcorn. These are like really little though. I enjoyed them. I think I started them inside and put them out. This was a couple years ago. It was good. They're really beautiful. They do pop, but the popcorn kernels are tiny, and the popped popcorn is also tiny. So it's not my favorite, but it's fun and kids love it, and it's worth, ornamentally they're really, really sweet. So this year I tried this, which is another type of popcorn called Robust something something. Anyways, they grew fairly well, but our season was so cold and so short this year that they didn't have a chance to mature. And then also Painted Mountain corn. This is just beautiful corn. It's multicolored, and it can be used as ornamentation or ornamentally, as well as I think it's for corn flour and stuff like that. So very cool. I sowed some of this last year with our really, really short season and cold season that we had last year. They didn't really have a chance. But they did grow a bit, and the colors on the stalks themselves were also beautiful. So consider that for an ornamental garden, where you want something that's ornamental with big foliage, and also maybe you get something out of it. On the side, these are seeds I've collected for my garden this year. So I have collected some Dalve peas, some green arrow peas, Jacob's Cattle beans, I'll show you those in a second, and also Scarlet Runners. I don't have any others to show you, so I might as well show you these. Aren't they beautiful? These are a bit on the smaller side. Again, a difficult year for hot season crops for us, but they did grow, and that'll be enough to get a nice stand of beans going next year, so that's what I'm holding on to those for. Those are very excellent as a sort of kidney bean replacement. I don't know how long they would take to cook, but I find they're less dry in texture than a kidney bean, a little bit more buttery, delicate, and I really enjoy the flavor of them as well. Talking about beans, for dry beans, these, sorry. This is Jacob's Cattle dry beans. These have been awesome for me this year. I have a whole jar sitting over there on my shelf. I'm definitely going to grow more of these next year. They're a bush bean. They hold themselves upright fairly well. And given that they did so well in a wet, cool year, I am looking forward to see what they'll do in a nice, warm, sunny, long year. Sorry, I've got something in my throat. For green beans, I have Bush Blue Lake beans. They look kind of yellow on the picture, but they end up being more pale green. They were pretty productive. I had a bit of a hard time starting them because I seeded them in my lower garden, and right after I seeded everything, we had basically 2 weeks of straight rain, and they got swamped out. Beans don't like sitting in wet soil, like saturated soil, and the soil was a bit too cold for them to germinate. If it had been warmer and that wet, they would have been fine because they would have germinated and they would have been able to use the water. Because the temperature was too cold for them to germinate, they didn't all come up right away. But I reseeded them, and I reseeded them 3 or 4 weeks after I seeded all my other beans, and I got a pretty decent crop off of them, even though our season was extra short this year. So definitely a winner, and I'm looking forward to growing these again. These are also a bush type. I also grew burgundy purple bush beans, but I had trouble with them. They were in a raised bed. They came up well. That wasn't an issue, but we had a storm come in the beginning of summer and knocked everything over, and those beans basically laid on the ground for the whole rest of the year. They were difficult to pick, and just kind of a mess. So this year I am going to be growing for the first time these Bloomhild beans. These are a purple green bean. They're a German heirloom, so there's a little bit of commonality there. I'm also a German heirloom. And these are a pole bean, so they're supposed to grow up a stalk really well, and that'll make it a lot easier to pick and a lot easier to see them as well. This year I was picking them up off the ground, and really dark soil and a purple bean don't have a very high contrast, so it's really hard to see them. So this should be more ideal. I enjoy picking beans on vines that they sort of are more visible, as long as you don't plant them too densely. So those are my beans. For carrots, I usually grow Bolero carrots. I get these from Vessie's, and I get them pelleted. The benefit to pelleted seed is that for carrots, the moisture needs to stay on the seed for them to germinate, and with our really dry climate, usually what ends up happening is the surface of the soil is impossible to keep wet. The pelleting, the material in the pellet helps to hold moisture against the seed as it germinates, which is great. It also means it's so easy when I spread out the seeds on the surface of the soil. What I'll do is I'll just move a little bit of soil off to the side, and I'll show you this when I actually do my garden in the spring. Move a little bit of soil off to the side spread out my seeds, and then I can just go in, because I can see them, I can pick them apart and place them and separate them so that I don't have to thin later on, or at least not nearly so often, and I don't waste so much seed. I found the germination on Bessie's stuff is great, and the germination on this pelleted seed is unparalleled. I really, really appreciate that. It makes it a lot easier. I also grew these. They're Malbec, they're red carrot. They were a lot of fun. They're really pretty. They are red all the way from the outside to the inside, which is kind of cool. Definitely gonna grow them again. Cosmic Purple was, I think, a free seed packet from Baker's Creek last year. We really enjoyed them. They were fun to look at. With the 3 colors of carrots, making a pickled carrot medley was great, just for that color variation, although these bled out quite a bit, so the water looks kind of red, and then you've got the actual red carrots, the orange carrots, and then the carrots that have a slightly purple tint to the skin still. But when they're fresh out of the ground, they are really, really dark purple, and this is just a beautiful, tasty carrot, amazing roasted, just to look at them. See that color variation? I love that. All right, what else? More root vegetables. Beets. I grow Boldor. These are a yellow beet. They do really well. I like them. I usually start half my beets inside and transplant them out once the ground is thawed or warm enough, and then the other half I'll direct seed, and that way I get a bit of a staggered harvest. Last year, for the first time, I grew Taunus. This is cylindrical beet, and the longer the season is, the taller they get. They start in the soil and you don't see nothing, and then they get a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger until you see them, and they're maybe about that thick around, and then they just start growing up out of the soil because they're literally pushing themselves out because they keep growing. And I had easily 6 to 8 inch beets in there that had been started right at the beginning. They will be bigger if you give them more space. If you crowd them, they tend to be a little bit smaller, a bit more carrot sized. So yeah, those are great. I really appreciate those. Those are great for canning because there's not tons of little tiny round beets to deal with. You get nice long cylindrical beets. Very, very handy for canning. And then I also grabbed some cheap local seeds. These are Betterave Detroit Rouge, and they did really well. Detroit Dark Red. Okay, I should read the English instead of trying to read the French. These also did really well. They got really big. Nothing to complain about. I like my beets. Now, the Detroit Red are more red. The Taunus are a darker red, but they're not like the really like purpley black beets that you sometimes see. And then of course the Boulder is a beautiful red beet with sort of a orangey, reddy skin on the outside. For turnips, I grew, last year I think I grew some of each. Maybe it was just the Swede Laurentian, but a Swede Laurentian is good standard. Again, turnips aren't very high up on my list. This is purple top white globe. They're not very high on my list, but I do like them. Throw in some things. My husband does not like vegetables, so I try to sneak them in wherever I can without getting in trouble. Just kidding. I make him eat his vegetables. Alright. Cucumbers. I have had hybrid puccini cucumbers in the past. These are parthenocarpic, which basically means that they're all female flowers, and they actually do better if they don't get pollinated. So these would be great if you are gardening under high tunnels or gardening in a greenhouse where you don't have bees, you don't want to deal with hand pollinating stuff. Look for parthenocarpic types of cucumbers. Yeah, they don't need pollination and all the flowers are female, so they all set fruit, and that's really handy as well if your weather is really temperamental, because they will set fruit even if it rains for a week. They will set fruit if it's too hot for the bees to be out for a week, whatever, they'll set fruit. I haven't had a lot of luck with them though, I think because I've always direct sown them, and I think next year I'm going to make a bigger effort to start them indoors and put them out under cover to accelerate them. But I did, for the first time, grow these homemade pickles, cucumber, sort of a generic sounding name. They were all right. These are definitely like a crawling, vining pickle. I didn't get a ton of pickles off of them, and again, that's because some stuff didn't come up, so I threw some extra seeds in after that really long rainy period, and those were some of the ones that I threw in afterwards. On the other hand, this one, Boston pickling. These also, some were direct sown and came up, some didn't, some were sown later to fill in gaps, and all of the Boston pickling that grew did really well. These would be excellent for climbing because they want to climb. They will start climbing without anything to help them, but obviously they can't stay up. But if you want a cucumber type, pickling cucumber that is really given to climbing, this is the one for you. It's got a really good tendril. It's really driven to climb. If you put it next to a fence and you don't want it to climb the fence, that's going to be a problem because it will. But yeah, I really like the Boston pickling. They were really, really successful for me this year. Next year I'm going to start them inside to give them that extra early boost. Should we talk brassicas? All right. So I've got some new ones for this year, but I'll talk about those later. Red Express. I grew these last year. These were phenomenal. I have been growing stonehead cabbage, which is here. Stonehead. Stonehead is a really, really dense cabbage. The issue that I have with the stonehead is that I find if you have too wet of a season, they split fairly easily. And we don't normally have that problem. Normally we have a very dry season, but then we often have a wet spell in fall and they'll crack if you don't get them early enough. So I'm gonna probably phase this out in favor of something else that's not quite as dense. The density of this is just really prone to cracking, which makes sense. The red cabbage, Red Express, they were very successful. The caterpillar, the cabbage moth, white cabbage moth, they really went for the green cabbages first, although they did get to these eventually. These didn't crack regardless of moisture. They stay fairly small. These are perfect. I have a whole bunch of these still in the fridge. If you cut them with the stem intact and just take off a few outer leaves, stick them in your fridge, they'll last in your fridge for a really long time. Now I have them wrapped up, or you can put them in a container, you can put them in a bucket, just put a piece of paper towel or something in there to absorb excess moisture. I've kept cabbages until they run out in January or February when I run out of cabbage, not because they went bad, just because I ran out. So that's definitely a winter I'm going to be growing again. And last year we grew Brussels sprouts, Long Island improved. I have not grown Brussels sprouts before last year, and so I am not an expert on these. I have questions actually. Some of my plants ended up getting nice and tall and looking like they had space for Brussels sprouts. Some of my Brussels sprouts plants stayed really, really short and compacted. I'm not sure if I should have been pulling off the bottom leaves a little bit earlier to try and make it elongate. Nevertheless, with a very short, very cool summer and a very high rate of cabbage moth, we didn't get to harvest any Brussels sprouts, and the tiny little ones that were on there by the time the frost came at the end of August, I was concerned that if I bit into it, I'd be biting directly into a worm. And so we didn't eat any of those. They were only about so big. Anyway, but I'm definitely going to do these again. What I'm going to do with my brassicas this year, especially the ones where I want to eat the leaves, is they're all going under a row cover for the whole year because I am just done with cabbage worms. I am done with them. And I think the stabilized temperatures and stable light levels will help them to grow at a more expedited rate as well. So that'll be cool. One of the things I will not be growing under that cover is something I grew this year. Burgundy broccolini. This was a star, and I've got a video on my YouTube channel. You can check that out. I really love this. They say extended harvest over 3 weeks. If the frost hadn't come, I wouldn't be surprised if I'd been harvesting these for a month and a half already. So those are great. Really good. Love them. I'm going to grow more of those. New for this year, I am adding a cabbage called Melissa. Now this is a Savoy leafed cabbage. That basically means that it's got crinkly leaves instead of smooth leaves, which means that the heads, the leaves themselves have flexibility in them, which is better to hopefully prevent splitting, and it's also better for cabbage rolls because they don't break as easily, so you can roll stuff in the leaves a little bit better. So I'm looking forward to that. That is an 85 days to maturity from transplant, but I think under row cover we'll be fine, and we'll get that nice and mature. And if they don't split, then that's better anyway, even if they're smaller. Also new this year is broccolini artwork. This is just a green broccolini, and it's a 57-day broccolini. It's similar to the one I just showed you, but this one is green instead of purple. Just thought I'd add some variety, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm adding a cauliflower this year, Roper. I'm looking forward to seeing how this grows, and this will also be grown under a row cover. Onions. Okay, so the ones I have grown in the past, and I should grow them again because they were really, really good. This is a Ishikura improved bunching onion from seed in the garden, like direct sown in the garden. These were great bunching onions. Yeah, really good. I grew this year, I grew giant Musselburgh leeks. I figured we have a fairly short season, so a giant leek should at least get moderately sized. And I was really impressed. They did really well. I got like 2.5, 3 inch bulbs at the bottom with a nice decent blanching length. I think next time I'm going to blanch them a little bit deeper, and I'm going to start these a lot earlier. I'm going to start these in January. Now these seeds are from last spring. I don't know how good of germination there will be. I'm hoping there is still some, and I've got, oh, there's a lot of seed in here. So if there's any germination in here, even if it's only 20%, I can start that. You can see here. There's some information on when it was packed for and whatnot. Minimum of 400 seeds. Usually with onions and alliums, the seeds are about 90% germination the first year, and then after that they drop by like half every year. Like they get really, really bad. So I don't know if any of these will germinate. If I can get like a 10% germination rate, then I can still get a bunch of leeks, and so I would be happy with that. I am contemplating how to save seed from alliums in the future in a place where I cannot overwinter them. That's a conversation and some research that I'm going to have to do. But I would really like to be able to grow my own onion seed just because of how short viability they have. If I could find a way to winter onion so that I can get seed from it for the next year, that I could continue that trend. That'd be great because then I'd always have enough seed. I wouldn't have to worry about viability. I also grew these. Now mine did not get this big. Mine, these are supposed to get up to 5 pounds. Obviously we do not have that long of a season, but I did get a pound, like a 15.5 ounce. Like the ones that really grew, and these were great for use in the fall. They're not good storage onions because there's so much water in them, so I chopped them up and froze them, or I used them right away in my canning. But to have a bunch of onions for canning season is great, and like I said, you can freeze them or pickle them or whatever you need to do. So yeah, definitely gonna try those again. And again, this is seed from last year. This is also seed from last year. I grew some of these. Now, the problem that I had with these is they did really well. They started off really good. They were growing really strong. But again, that storm came, knocked all the tops over. And when onion tops get knocked over, the signal in the plant to stop growing and start hardening off happens. And so my onions got cut off long before they were fully mature. The couple that did survive, like that stayed upright until fall, they were much better sized. But even that being said, even the really small ones, like the really small ones that I have in my cold storage right now, they're still really nice and firm. They're an excellent storage onion. They germinated and grew really well. I'm impressed with them. I'm definitely going to be growing those again. Hopefully that seed is still viable. In case those old seeds weren't viable, I did go ahead and order one additional type. This is an onion Cortland. It's also supposed to be a storage onion, a good storage onion. So it's 85 days from transplant or 110 days from direct seed. I am going to transplant these, and I'm going to start all of my onions and leeks in January. Last year I started in February and it just wasn't early enough. They were really small when they went out. Now we get into, ooh, here's a fun one. Asparagus, Mary Washington. I'm looking forward to these. Curious to see how effectively I can grow them, how well they winter, how many years it takes to produce food. But asparagus is always a long game, and it is an exercise in hope and future. So grow asparagus. Always grow asparagus. I have grown in the past melons. Pixie melon. This is a good one. It's a little small cantaloupe. I haven't had tons of luck with my melons because I haven't, in the past, like we've only been on this property for 2 years, and I haven't had a chance to get my spring routine really normal. Every spring we've been frantically building raised beds before we could actually get our garden out there. So there's been delays in seeding and stuff every year that we've been here. This year with the garden already made, ready to go, I'm hoping I can put a little more attention into giving some of these plants the attention that they need, especially the melons. They really, really need protection, and they need cover for spring after they get transplanted so that they survive. They did not do well this spring with the super wetness. They just, and cold. Not happy melons. Vista. I've not had really big success with any of these, but I'll show you them anyway. Crimson Sweet. I'm really looking forward to these. I hope I can grow them. They look so good though. I have grown these with excellent success. Diplomat melons. I grew these at our old home and they did really well. They were fairly small, but I think if I nurture them appropriately, I can get some decent sized melons. Those are really, really good. These are a green melon, and then I've got this yellow doll, and the largest watermelon I've ever harvested was about that big. But yeah, I'm gonna do my best this year to hack melons and get them the treatment that they need, the environment that they need to really, really thrive. New for this year in the melons, and not really melons, but this is a summer squash. This is a summer squash surprise mix. So there's at least 4 varieties: green, light green, yellow, and striped. And since I want to grow quite a few zucchini, we had 7 plants last year. And let me just say, zucchini is great. If you can consistently pick them small, it's maybe not what I would recommend for an allotment where you can only get there once a week, but if you are growing zucchini close to your back door, somewhere where you can look at them regularly. I went and looked at my zucchini every day, and pretty much every other day I harvested something. And we just ate a lot of zucchini. It was great. Excellent source of food. New melons I'm excited for. This is mango melon or vine peach. Now these are completely foreign to me. I'm curious to see what they're like flavor-wise. They're about 3-inch fruit, and they are primarily used in cooking and pickling. So it'll be really interesting to see how these turn out, what they taste like, if they taste good raw, if they taste better cooked, but we're gonna try it. Also another watermelon, blacktail. Blacktail mountain watermelon. And this melon, Charente? I don't know how to say that. I'm not an expert. But these look amazing, and they're right up on the back. Very fragrant orange flesh. 2 to 3 pounds fruit with light gray-green skin. I'm really looking forward to these, and I'm hoping, again, like I said, to hack the melon situation. Then, okay, we got to get into greens a little bit here. Black-seeded Simpson, if you want a lot of greens in a short amount of time and you're not fussy about them being crisp, because they're not very crisp, but very, very productive, very fast growing, will grow huge. If you keep picking them, it'll keep growing. It doesn't bolt quite as quickly as some other things, but it bolts faster than my new red fire, which, speaking of which, is in here. New red fire is an excellent red lettuce. It doesn't bolt very easily, but it doesn't keep very long in the fridge, and it's not terribly crisp, so it's not my favorite, but for adding a little bit of color, it's nice, and the fact that it doesn't bolt easily is nice. My new favorite from this year is Little Gem. These are little tiny romaines. Now, if you give them a full square foot to grow in, they will fill that space. If you crowd them and grow them closer together, then you'll get individual heads like this. If you let them have as much space as they want, they'll make a big plume. And eventually there will be a tiny little heart in there. But if you want really big, if you want really dense hearts, you kind of want to crowd them a little bit. I'm going to experiment with some spacing in the garden this year on those. Spinach, I have attempted to grow Bloomsdale spinach. This worked okay in the spring, but it started bolting very quickly once the even moderately warm temperatures hit. I've also grown Carenta before in the spinach, and it's just been so hit and miss on whether or not I get excellent spinach or it just bolts before it does anything else. So for this year I am, okay, also pak choy. I'm not going to pronounce that one either, but this is a really cute, tiny little pak choy. Really good heat resistance, bolting resistance, all that. Not my favorite texture, but I haven't had a lot of pak choy in my life, so that's maybe just me not used to it. Definitely something I would add a little bit of every year, but not make a big part of my garden. And as you can see, I've got a massive bag, well, not massive, but I have a lot, there's a lot of seed in here. This bag is actually almost empty compared to what it was last year before I did all my seed starting in the winter. Collecting your own lettuce seed is totally worth doing. If all of your plants are bolting, let one of them stand there until it's actually flowered and set seed. Always worth collecting seed for lettuce, because you know, you want microgreens on the cheap, that's your seed source. New for this year is a spinach called Seaside from Vessie's. It's supposed to be a high volume production. Our trials have proven Seaside to be our best variety for dependable bolt-resistant production, and with a medium to high resistance to powdery mildew, which matures in 30 days. So that sounds pretty ideal. We'll see how it works. Also these, because I'm just a big fan of tiny little lettuce heads, because we're only 2 people and there's only so much lettuce we can eat in a week. So yeah, I'm looking forward to these. These are supposed to be about 6 to 8 inch butterhead type lettuces. And again, I think these are going to want to be a little bit crowded in order to form those heads nice and dense. And then I'm not sure if this was a free seed or something that I picked. I think it may have been a free seed, but it's called corn salad. And it is an edible green, highly nutritious, recognized for its soft, supple texture and nutty flavor. Unparalleled cold hardiness make it the perfect winter or cool season green and ideal for winter market farmers. So this will be interesting. I'll try it. I might try some in the winter here. I might grow 1 or 2 just to see what happens, and then see if I can transplant in the spring, how it grows through the summer, and then I'll do maybe another planting in the fall to see if they actually do better in the fall. That's something I would maybe want to grow in the greenhouse whenever we actually build it, into the winter, as far as I can get away with. Now, I've got a lot of herbs, but not all of them are very important to me, or not all of them do I grow regularly. One thing I would recommend is wild thyme. If you live in zone 2 like me and winters get real cold, this will still survive under snow, at least most years. Another thing that you should be growing is lovage. If you've never heard of this before, go look it up. It is basically, it's like if celery and rhubarb had a baby. Lovage is the answer. Lovage is a perennial herb that has a very, very strong celery flavor. You want to use it a little bit at a lower quantity than you would celery, but it's excellent for adding that flavor in soups and stews and stuff like that. It dries really well, and it grows like a beast. It survived our winter last year. We'll see if it survives this winter. I have good feelings about it. It seems like a really hardy plant, and if it grows for me, it'll grow for you, and it's worth doing. And what else we got? Some things I've tried. Chives. I'm not sure if there's a whole lot of varieties of chives or just chives, but these, my perennial chive plants are from there, and I have just taken cuttings from my original plants from the old home to bring over here. So, but I still have some extra seed, although granted, I'm not sure how viable they will be. If I wanted to try and reseed, I might have to get new seed, but I still got a plant, and if you let that plant go to flower a couple times, you'll have enough seed there as well. That's easy enough to do. A note about tarragon. If it doesn't say that it's French tarragon, it's probably Russian tarragon. And I have no hard feelings towards Russian tarragon, but it's not going to be the flavor you associate with cooking, usually. Russian tarragon has a different flavor, is not quite as delicate as French tarragon, and also when the package says this is, what did it say? Oh, it doesn't have a zone on here. I've looked this up though. It's supposed to be zone 5. Don't believe that. I think this would probably grow in Alaska. I have a whole hedge of this stuff. It gets really big, really hard, woody and stuff, and I just cut it down every year in the spring, and I just treat it like a hedge. You can pluck the fresh sprouts in the spring and use them the same as you would asparagus. They have a little bit of a greener flavor, but I have enjoyed them, and it's a nice quick growing hedge if you're willing to manage the fact that it will want to take over the space. Chamomile. I do love chamomile. This is a German chamomile. It's apple scented. It's lovely. Again, it will self-seed like crazy. but makes a wonderful tea. So you can maybe grow that in a pot or grow it somewhere in the middle of a path where it's only going to be able to spread its seed onto something that's not going to be viable for growth. Totally worth growing. I'm going to be planting more of that this year because I need some of that tea. Parsley is necessary for me. This is Italian dark green. This is a fresh package actually. Looking forward to that. Another herb you should be growing, another perennial herb, is betony. Now I'm growing this for tea. It did winter and it flowered. It generally won't flower the first year that it's grown. The first year it just looks like a little low mound. The second year, once the flowers are starting to open and they're maybe about half open, you can cut off the whole stalk. You can cut the whole plant down to the ground. I didn't do that because mine are still only a year old, so I just cut the stalks of the flowers back and picked only a few of the larger leaves at the base. And I got a big thing of tea. It's supposed to be good medicinally. Of course, how much study there is behind that, I don't know, but I do know that it is supposed to have anti-inflammatory properties and that it's supposed to be good for migraines, and so it's a winner for me. It makes a lovely tea, and I quite enjoy it as an unsweetened tea, which is something that I like because most teas that I like I need to sweeten a little bit. Borage is another good annual. There's my oats, parsley, Italian dark green. Sage is good. I've had sage winter. This is supposed to be a zone 5 as well. I've had it survive some winters and then die other winters, and it might just have been in fact that it was too woody at that point. But sage is lovely to grow, and it's just grown, homegrown is so nice. The flavor is so much more intense than you'd expect. And then, of course, we've got basil. The cinnamon basil was interesting. It was prettier as a cut plant, cut flower for me than it was as a vegetable for flavoring stuff, but that's alright. Oh, I found my kale. I do have kale. Winter boar is what I've got. I'm going to be growing that undercover this year so that it doesn't get full of worms. Dark purple opal basil. That was good this year. I enjoyed that. And then I also had just a basic sweet basil, which was productive. And then I've got Bee Balm Lemon. This is a free seed pack from Baker's Creek as well. These bloomed beautifully. I haven't actually tried tea from them, but they did make beautiful blooms. Bee Balm Panorama. I've had a few of these survive, but the bee balm I think that I have on my wildflower patch is actually a wild bee balm from the wildflower mix. And those I also have collected for tea. I'm uncertain about the quality of the tea. I might not have picked them early enough. But again, a beautiful one for the tea. Great for the bees. It is a beautiful flower. And then of course dill. So that is, oh, no, a few more. Aunt Molly's ground cherries are a absolute wonder. They're great. They're a very confusing flavor. You can't tell if it's like savory or sweet or sour or what it is, but it's lovely. It's really neat. It makes good jam. I enjoy them. I also have grown strawberries. These wild strawberries have been very productive. They have thrown no runners. They melted out of the snow basically fully green last year. We'll see with the Chinook this year how they survived because they did get uncovered. But they fruited, they started flowering when it was still freezing regularly overnight. So they did well, and they just kept fruiting. The flavor of the fruit is maybe not great, but that's probably my fault. I think I need to enrich the soil that they're in right now, give them a little bit more fuel, so to speak, so that they can make good, tasty strawberries. I have also grown these from seed. These are a hybrid between a domestic and a wild. They produce lovely tomatoes. They produce lovely strawberries the first year. Overwintering them, they're a little bit less hardy than the other ones. They did survive, or some of them survived, but definitely not with the same vigor So that is all of my vegetable seeds. Let me know if you want to see all my flowers. I can walk you through at least the perennials, because annuals it doesn't really matter, but perennials is where it really comes down to if you're in zone 2 and you don't know whether this thing will survive. I haven't tried everything, but I have tried a lot of things, and I just really want to extend that to you and say, as an example, I'll just put this as an example. Dianthus. So this beautiful dianthus from Baker's Creek, it's supposed to be a zone 7. And it's supposed to be an annual everywhere else. It's supposed to die over winter. I planted 5 of these last year and 2 of them came back. And I think the only reason that the other 3 didn't come back is that they didn't have sufficient ground cover. So I think if they got mulched more heavily, they would. And I did mulch them this year, and I added a few more. So we'll see how they survive. I also have a red dianthus and an Arctic fire dianthus that I've been growing for many years that are zone 6. And sometimes the zoning on packages just, it's not the rule. It might be how hardy it's been tested. Maybe it doesn't survive in zone 4, but maybe it does in zone 2 for some reason. I don't know. But sometimes it's worth ignoring the packaging that says zone 2 or zone 7 to 10 only, whatever. So let me know if you want to see more of my flower seed collection. Hope you enjoyed this really long video. I hope I haven't been talking way too fast this whole time. Anyways, this is the beginning. I might go ahead and order a few more things because there's a few more things I'd like to try. I would love to try artichokes as an example. So yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna go have a look at the seed catalogs again. And yeah, but I am looking forward to the season. I really enjoy the seeds. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into my vegetable seed collection. I hope this helps you in some way. Maybe you're just uncertain about which things to try, and you're lacking confidence that it'll work. Try it anyway. Be brave. You can do it. It'll be fine. Anyways, if you like this video, like, share, subscribe, comment, share it with your friends. We're not getting a lot of traction as a YouTube channel, and if we don't get a little bit more consistent viewership, then it's going to be really hard for me to justify continuing to make videos. So if you think this is quality content, please put the effort out and try and spread this as far as you can, and hopefully we can go through this whole next year together, start to finish, what I do in my garden, and hopefully that can help you. Alright, thanks for watching, thanks for enduring and enjoying and being excited with my seeds and me. We'll see you